And thank you for joining CMA Weekly this week. We have Rob Ayre from Zapier, who has a lot of fun stuff to show us about what he's been doing with AI and automation. I will be quietly in the background listening, watching the chat. So if you have questions, you can ask in chat, or Rob will tell you the best way to ask your questions. Go ahead, Rob.
Sure. Thanks, Mary. And hey, everybody. I'm excited to chat with everyone today. Like Mary mentioned, so I've been at Zapier now for about 3 and a bit months. And before I get started, what I'm going to talk about today is kind of how I've been using AI in my job, how I've been sort of building the foundation of my advocacy program through AI, what that kind of looks like, what the different surfaces are. But before I go too deep, I just want to kind of level set and just get a sense of where everybody's at in terms of the systems that they're using. I don't know if there's like a raise hand or maybe just in the chat, like how many of you, let me know, are you using Claude? Are you using ChatGPT? And then further than that, are you using things like Claude Code, Claude Cowork? Anybody using Cursor? I'm a pretty big Cursor stan. Claude, lots of Claude. And hot, cool. And then sounds like most folks have some systems working. How much right now would you say you are connecting those systems to your other apps through MCP connections, OpenAPI endpoints, that type of thing? Not connecting. Cool. 75%. Nice. Using integrations, systems, MCP in there. Okay, cool. It's helpful. So what I'm going to do today, I of course built a little bit of deckware. I'm going to go through a little bit of a slide, but then what I'll do is I'll actually just open up my screen and I'll show you kind of what I've built. Before we get started, so like I said, I started at Zapier about 3 months ago. I had just been coming off a job at a company called WorkLeap, where I wasn't really doing advocacy anymore. I was primarily focused on customer expansion, so cross-sell, upsell. I owned like a pipeline number. It was very much marketing to customers, the whole life cycle with the focus on expansion and revenue. In this role, it's very much been on customer advocacy. So what I'm going to show you is just probably one small part of my program, with the primary focus when I came in on how do we identify advocates? How do we activate advocates? How do we turn those activations into content that the team can use? And how do we make that content accessible? It's that end result that I really, kind of wanted to focus on. I'm going to focus on this in this call. And if the call to action is nothing else, it is to stop folks having to come to you saying, do we have a case study for this? Do we have a quote for that? Do we have a logo for this? Etc. And awesome data that you have Zapier, that'll be helpful. The other thing too is once I go through this full, spiel, what I will also do, I've got, I'll show you exactly what it looks like, but I've got a skills and agent package. So if you are using Claude, I'll give you a zip file. If you're using Claude, Cursor, or Codex, you can take that zip file, you can drop it in. I'll kind of walk through at the end, but it's got a series of skills, it's got a series of agents. And then the best part of what it has is the thing that for me really pushed, let's say, like the snowball off the ridge for using AI, which is my second brain file. And that part has been, this is going to come up a lot. Hank is not a real person. Hank is what I call my cursor. So just understand that as I go into this, when I start to be like, Hank does this, Hank does that. Yeah, so let's do a little bit of deckware. So the whole thing with any customer advocacy professional, as many of you are aware, we're almost often one person, we're one orchestrator, but we have many workflows. And so what I want you guys to think about as I'm going through this presentation and through the actual demo is, what's the one workflow that this weekend I can geek out on and code myself through, or AI myself through? The reality is that you probably have hundreds of workflows, and you're currently sitting in your seat being like, shit, AI should do this, it's got to do this, got to do this. Start with one simple process. The part that I kind of have found is that we're all one team, we have enterprise expectations. But the bottleneck isn't the ideas. It's mapping out what the life cycle or what the cycle of advocacy development looks like, and building in the tools to help you close tabs and make the handoffs easier, make the process easier. And so that's what I'm going to kind of talk about is how I built this without really any additional software other than Zapier, but you'll see like it could be any kind of table, the Zapier MCP, and then my cursor account. Before I get started, I just want to talk a little bit about something that I see a lot in the marketing of AI. You'll often find people and they'll be like, I've got like 30 agents to do this. I've got Rick and Randy and Joey and all of these people that are my agents that are doing things. What I've found in my actual work is that I've just got Hank, and then Hank executes through a series of skills and a series of markdowns the actions that I have. I thought about this the other day and I ended up putting it in this, like, I was like, all right, maybe people want to have like cute little names for things. And so what I'll walk you through and I'll show you is like, I've got Hank and he's my chief of staff. Just to like scare you a little bit, this is like my cursor account. So you can see like just the mayhem that it can be. But Hank's my chief of staff. Then I've got like a program ops person, and he does, he helps me to spot my advocates in Slack through usage, through that type of thing. He also runs my weekly pipeline pulse, all of that, and I'll show you exactly what all this looks like. I've got Scout, who does my discovery. So if I do, once I identify an advocate, it'll actually run the discovery and figure out what they're doing. Finn, he's the person that'll write like all of my outreach. He'll personalize my outreach. They'll do all that. Blake is the one, like, once I collate all this information on how that person is using Zapier, it takes that and writes a V1 story draft. It edits the draft. It does copy editing. It runs an anti-patterns markdown file against it, and then it's able to give me a story. And then I've got my publisher, right? So I'm able to go directly from a story in draft, once it's approved by a customer, directly through Cursor. I can push that into our CMS and have it live on the website without having to go through any web development. As you can see, I'm obviously using Claude Design, so like I can create social assets for it. And then finally my GTM. So I just bring that up quickly because all of that, I can name them as like different agents, but they're just different agentic workflows that are all running simultaneously through a single AI harness, which is my Cursor account. And so that kind of harkens back to what I said off the top. This all started with really one workflow, which was how do I identify advocates? Then it was how do I track advocates? Then it was how do I turn those advocates into content? How do I, surprise and delight them? All of that. So like I said, if you take one thing away, you're not trying to build 5 different like chat bots or 5 different AI entities. You're trying to build workflows for specific outcomes that you're trying to achieve. And so for me, what that looks like is exactly what I just walked through. So I've got Hank, which is my Cursor account, and he's my orchestration layer. And what I'll show you really quickly in Hank here too, and I'll give you the full file for this towards the end of this session. What you can see in here on this side over here is these are all my like skill files. So there's a whole mess of stuff in here. But what I want to pay attention to really closely here are my brain files. And so these are files that boot up at the start of nearly every single session. The really important one that I've got here is my context file. So this is just a file that has ongoing things that I'm doing, working things. I've got my craft file. I've got this journal file so that Hank can go back and like reference things. I've got this anti-patterns file. This is a really important file for my writing because I put in here like what I don't want, avoid the AI sludge, right? It's the thing that's able to kind of talk to all of that. And anyways, I'll put this in there too, but you've got a bunch of different things and I'll show you what it looks like in the end. But pretty much the way that it ends up working. So I've got him kind of orchestrating from discovery to outreach to story to publishing, specifically for my customer story development. But what that looks like is, for example, in Slack, and maybe I'll just start showing you exactly what this looks like. But in Slack, I've got a Zap that exists where somebody can put, there's like a little magnifying glass emoji reaction. They can put that, I can put that on any chat. And in doing that, I'm able to, Cursor is available for Mac. So I'm just reading the comments now. It is kind of for coding, but let me take a step back. Sorry. Okay. Yes. Cursor's available. No, that's a great question, and I'll be better to read the chat here. Let me take a step back. So Cursor is very similar to Claude. For anybody who's used Claude, it looks like this, right? So this is what you might look like in Claude. You've got chat here. So most people would probably look at Claude as a version of ChatGPT. You can go in here, you can talk to it, you can chat. I've got all the different chats that I've got. And then in Cowork and in Code is where you can start coding. Cursor allows you to do all of those things at once. The big thing that I find really beneficial in Cursor is I can use any model that I want. So, I could select even all the way up to Fable 5, which is the new Anthropic model that came out last week. But what I can also do is like move immediately from, let's say, like research or ideation straight to execution. And this is where that execution is able to happen persistently across multiple apps. And so I think, Nicole's got a point there. A lot of people think like, I'm not a developer. Like it's scary, but you're not actually coding. It's all natural language. So like, I couldn't tell you, I wonder if there's some stuff in here where I'm probably running through code in here. So this is an example. So like, this is such a silly thing that I did yesterday. I had this customer that emailed me, and it was just this like cool email, and I was like, oh, I want to share this with people. So I was like, can you just create an image out of this? And so it coded up a here. It coded up just like an HTML page. So, it ended up it's just like an image. It looks like that's like a silly kind of way to do it. But you don't have to be afraid of coding because it's just going to do it for you, and then you can always edit. So there's not really a big thing to be worried about there. It's just it allows you to do things in a way that you wouldn't previously be able to do. So to kind of go back to this whole kind of let's go through the process of what I've kind of built in here. So you can flag an emoji, and what I'll do is I'm gonna skip the deck entirely, and I'm gonna start from like the actual build of what I've got. So here's the scenario, right? You've got your Slack, and I will go to this customer advocacy notification. What people are able to do right off the bat, and I'm going to show you all the surfaces that I've got for this, is they would be able to go here. They could go into Slack. They could go into Slack on any kind of comment. This one's that's already been completed, but they find the advocate spotted, which is this little emoji. And once they put that on an emoji, there's a backend Zap that runs, and what it does is it pushes this comment into what I've got as my customer advocacy notifications table. This flags for me. It says like, hey, we've spotted this advocate from this company. It was spotted by this person at this time. We don't have any assets with them right now, or actually this person we had a quote with them. The status is warming. And then what it says to me is it gives me this prompt to enrich this data and paste it in Cursor. So what I'll do right off the bat, whenever I'm trying to find a customer, what I can do is I can go to Cursor and I can say something like, I'm looking for a customer in X industry, or on that, I would just put the full prompt in. Once the prompt comes in, what it does is it runs a skill, and this skill is going to be available in that library for y'all. It runs a skill called account story discovery. And then it pushes out for me, and this is the part where you want your MCPs to be connected to your product usage data, if you can, connected to your HubSpot, Salesforce, CRM, connected to Gong. Yeah, I kind of did. So I had to create a new emoji, which is relatively simple. Trying to remember how I did that part of it. Again, all that stuff that you can ask your like Cursor, Claude, or whatever you're using. Or you could just use a pre-existing one, and then you would literally just go to if you were using Zapier, for example, like you could come in, you could go build a Zap, and then start with the Copilot under Create, and you could like write out what you wanted to do. So you could say something like, I'd like to create a notification based on the use of whatever emoji that is triggered. You could trigger it specifically from a channel, right? So then I could go here and I could just go here. I could pull this this channel link or the channel's details. I could just pull like the string at the end of the URL for what that channel is, and then it would build your reaction. So that part's like a bit of the infrastructure. But once that gets pulled, and I kind of run this, what it does is it does a few things. And this is the part where like what I tried to do was recreate what I would have had to otherwise purchase from a third-party vendor. And so the way that when I came into this role, what I thought about, I was like, all right, what do I need from a software perspective to effectively run a program? And to me, what that was one, I needed kind of like a CRM, a way to catalog all of my advocates. I needed a way to visualize a pipeline once I have identified or leveraged an advocate to run the customer story creation process from like advocate identified to story live. And then I needed some sort of surface or table that would host all of the customer content that I have, which is then available to be indexed, sourced, and found by my sales team, by my marketing team, by my, you name it, it's able to find that. And so that's basically what I ended up creating. So what happens is like, I'll come into Cursor, say, hey, I'm looking for this industry. It runs that account story discovery. Then it pushes out, this is an anonymized version of this in Coda. Coda is just it's like Notion. It's our documentation tool. So what it pushes out for me, and this is kind of all built into that skill, the account story discovery skill, it says like, here's who the company is, here's the plan that they're on, here's the ARR that they're paying, and then the data window. So I always just have it on a rolling window of 90 days because I'm like, all right, I want to see how this person or this company has been using Zapier. And then what it does is it gives me usage strength. So how much are they actually using our product? What's the growth trajectory? Like, have they grown in that 90 days, over 90 days of billable tasks and actually using our product? Are there any champions? Do we have, because at this point, I maybe haven't even found a contact yet. Is there a champion that's been identified? Is there relationship warmth? Is there story angle clarity? And then are there any risks or blockers that I should be aware of ahead of time? It goes a little bit further, and then it gives me an account snapshot. It says, here's a little bit of information about this company. Here's exactly how they're using Zapier, the top apps that they're connecting Zapier to, whether it's Code by Zapier, HubSpot, Google Sheets. Again, this is like an anonymous company. It's not a real company. I wanted to keep PII as much down as I could. I added into the skill recently. We have primitives, which is our MCP, SDK, CLI. And so I wanted to be able to call that out when I do this account discovery. And so I built that into the skill. Again, just so everyone's like in the right mindset and the way that you're using coding harnesses. Like when I say I built this, I talked to Hank. I was like, I literally just would open up Cursor and be like, hey, Hank, primitives is now a really big objective for the organization. I need to make sure that I'm identifying customers who are using it in important ways. Can you include that in the skill? And he goes and like rewrites portions of the skill so that he can do that. I test a couple of outputs, and now it's giving me really strong outputs. Then what it does is it gives me recommended story angles. And these have been really, really, yeah, very good, I guess. So it gives me like full recommended story angles. And what it does in some of the really cool ones is it's going in. So we use Databricks to be able to kind of source all this. It'll go into like Gong. It'll pull quotes ahead of time. Like I've basically gotten to the point where before I'm even on a call with a customer, I can have a V1 draft of what their story might already be. Then what it'll do is it'll identify who the champions are, why they're a champion, what evidence identifies them as champions. Under that, it'll tell me a Zapier relationship map. So it'll say, okay, here's who the CSM is, here's who the AE is, here's who the technical account manager is, et cetera, et cetera. And then it'll also give me red flags. So like, is there any negative CSATs? Have there been any failed Zap runs that have been running recently? Is there any, you name it. Like it pretty much sources this up. Yeah.
Hi, Rob. It's Mary.
Okay.
I think I got lost a little bit. So you have the skills set up. It works in Claude, but you actually run it in Cursor. Then you ask Cursor, like you type in your chat there, what you're looking for. And then it shows up. Did it link to this? I must have missed something.
Good question. It built this after. We can do a full run end to end. Does anybody here use Zapier and doesn't mind me doing a run of this on your company? Seems like a strange
I
thing to
don't,
do.
I don't know if I have that Zapier at ours in for, but you could try it.
Well, I'll give you an example of like specifically one that I did yesterday. So I was actually meeting with somebody from a company called Go Canvas yesterday. Yes, mine. DBT Labs. Okay. Let me see here. Do I have one from yesterday? Hold on. Let me go to this. So what I would do, and just to be clear, so my coding harness that I use is Cursor, but you could use this in Cursor or in Claude or in Codex. The first thing that I would do is I would come here and I would say run account story discovery on what's one that came up here? DBT Labs. Let's see if this comes up. DBT Labs. And so what it's going to do is, okay, good, I'm connected. It's going to go and it's going to activate the account story discovery skill, which is then going to run against our Databricks. So you can see here it's using that account story discovery skill. And this is a skill that's available in that Second Brain library that I'll share with everybody. So it's going to run that against it. It's going to figure out who that company is. And then once it does that, it does two things. And it would do this in Cursor or in Claude or in Codex. It'll write it into a markdown file. So it looks something like this. Obviously, I can't really read this. So yeah, so this is what it does. So it comes in, it lists out these to-dos. So it's going to identify the DBT Labs family. It's going to gather the intelligence. Rachel, I'll answer the question in a sec. And then, like I said, it'll gather the primitives, it'll analyze the champions, angles, story readiness score, et cetera. So it's executing all of that through the Databricks agent now. We'll come back to this in a second. What I do here is I just want to read it in this. And so what I've done here is once this is done, I just say through an MCP connection to Coda, I just say, hey, can you push this into Coda? And that's what then creates this here, just so it's like a readable surface that I could then share with like the CSM team or anybody like that. So basically, if you just have easy, simple, if you just have connection points, Hank is what's in the center of what I'm doing, and then it'll push it into other services. But any other questions just on this part here? And then I won't jump to like what the next thing is as I'm going through this. Let me take a pause here. I'm maybe jumping around too many things.
Rob, quick question here. So you've obviously built this in Cursor, but let's say if an organization doesn't have it or doesn't intend to get Cursor, is that still possible with abilities like Notebook or Claude? Because there's a lot of systems that we have that are different that may not necessarily connect well, but maybe you can still write a markdown to connect those things, but provide them as links instead.
Yeah, you could definitely do it through any coding harness that you would want, or any tool that in theory would have agentic capabilities. But what I find easiest is if it's Claude, Cursor, or Codex, that's where you can connect your sort of agent building environment to your other apps. But it works in any, if you have Claude, I'll give you an example. I'll show you exactly what this skills package looks like, because I think it might help to unlock a little bit of what this kind of looks like. So basically what I've got in here is you would take this whole file and you would drop it in. Your coding harness or agent would read these files, and then it would, so in Claude, when you open Claude, you go here, you'd create a new project and you'd call the new project, I don't know, you call it like CMA Second Brain. And then you'd add files to the Second Brain through that you'd already downloaded from the zip file. And then in the zip file, you'd make sure that you pulled up the Claude Second Brain. And then in here, you would drop into it. One, I've got all of these brain files. And this is the part that like I find really unlocks the value of these coding harnesses. It's going to create for you a context file. That context file is going to be your persistent memory layer across all of your actions. It's going to, include this craft file that I've already created with and how I run my programs. It's going to give this connections file. And so what that's going to do is inform your agent, okay, let's go look for the different tools that we have. And so this will kind of help you guys to get set up. It'll recommend, obviously on Zapier, it's going to recommend you go and check out Zapier MCP as a potential avenue if you already have that, or MCPs in general, and then the SDK as well. It's just an easier way for agents writing back and forth. A judgment, a performance log. The performance log is just a fun little thing that I wrote on the side. It's basically this thing where like whenever something good happens, I just go back to Hank and I'm like, oh, Hank, like somebody just said I was doing a good job at something. And then he like logs it in there so that for my next performance review, I can just be like, hey, Hank, can you write my performance review? It's also got all these skills in here. And so what I've been going through is like that advocate spot skill. There's a skill already generalized. So what these skills all are is I've generalized them to start on invocation to say, go ask what tools they have available that would replace, for me, say Databricks, HubSpot, Gong, and then you're able to say, okay, I've got this, and this, and it's going to open up and help you to connect to those. So you've got the advocate discovery, your find social proof, that V1 draft narrative, the outreach draft, the publish check, and then if you want to set up Zapier SDK, which is free right now in beta, you can do that. And that's just a quick way to get some connections to your apps. Yeah.
Is there, Rob, do you have a slide that shows like kind of what this workflow looks like? I might, you might be going a little too fast for me. Sorry.
Yeah.
I understand what you're showing,
Yeah.
but I think after maybe like the third tool, I'm like, wait, what? And maybe it's Friday afternoon and Mary's had a crazy week. Or, it's, you're just a lot faster than me. You've clearly got this automation stuff, worked out in your head. I think someone asked, like, how long did it take you to create this? I'm assuming it was something you like started and then made changes and implemented over time over the 3 months, or how did you come up with this? Like everything, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah. So let me take a step back because I think the biggest thing that I want to make sure you guys take away is more my like mentality towards. So total time to build end to end, just my story pipeline mechanisms, let's call it, was probably about 2 or 3 weeks with a lot of bug crushing and fixes. And so what that is a set of tables, Kanban boards, etc. But what's most important is that in between every action that I do is my cursor account, but it could be your Claude account, it could be your whatever your coding harness is. My like line in the sand is that I refuse personally, and I'm maybe like 70 or 80% of the way there, but I refuse personally ever to go personally into an app again. So my whole thing is like, what can I do from Claude or from Cursor that can send an agent to that app and do the work with my direction, if that makes sense.
Gotcha.
And by a coding harness, what I mean by that is Claude or Cursor. So basically, what you're able to do in like a really simple version of this would be, I'll walk you through a specific workflow here. So let's say I've now finished that first job of account story discovery, right? And I read it and I go, yeah, I like that angle. I think, what was this person's name in here? I read it and I think, great, Devin, that's the person that I want this to work. So what I do is I'll go into here and I'll say, Devin from XX company is perfect for a story. And assuming this, I've already done the account story discovery, add them to my advocate registry. and start a pipeline process. What it then does once I hit go is it'll run a series of MCP calls to my other surfaces, my tables, and it'll do two things. One, in my advocate registry, this is just my CRM, right? This is all advocates. What I did here was a couple of things. One, it's ongoing. Two, it's historic. When I first started, I had my cursor and my Claude account go through all of our website, find every blog that's ever been published, find every webinar we've ever done, every G2, index it and pull it into this folder, into this file, and specifically the people who talked. And so this is just my ongoing registry of people that are advocates for Zapier. I've built on it. This is not something that I've all done in one day, but I built on it like, why are they in the registry? Do I have a sense of what they're open to doing? Why are they great? And then this is a part that I've been working on recently because I'm building kind of like a more formal reference program. It's got like, when was the last time we asked them to do something? I've got a built-in 2-week cooldown period. How many asks this quarter? So first, Hank will come in here. He'll register the person. Then he'll go here and he'll log a customer story pipeline card. So first it starts at advocate identified. I've reviewed this and I'm thinking, okay, I want to move this forward. So let's say if it's a larger account, I need to get the CSM involved. What he'll do is then move it over to this. Like Hank will come and move this over. I'll send that over. The CSM will approve it. He'll be like, yep, this is great. You can reach out. Then once I reach out, I just go back to Cursor and I say, hey, Hank, I have sent an email to whatever that guy's name was, David. Just log that. And so he's like, cool, I will. So he would move this card over. And then once that person replies, I just go back to Hank and I say, hey, Hank, I have heard back from David and he's open to meeting on this date. Technically, I'm now at the point where I don't have to tell him what date because Hank is also in my Google Calendar and in my Gmail. So like he sees when that reply comes in. So he would automatically move that over, but I digress. And I don't want to go too far down that road. So he would move it to in conversation. Once the interview is scheduled, move it to in conversation. Once the interview is complete, it would move it here. Again, I'm either telling Hank that it's done or he's like listening to my Granola, which is a call recording tool, or he's reading my Gmail. Once the draft is in review, so I've already written a draft here. And again, typically I'm like writing drafts before I'm even reaching out because of the data that I've got. But once it's approved or in review, they review it. He emails back, says, cool, it's approved. And then once it gets approved, then I just come back here. I say, hey, story's been approved. Let's push it to our CMS. And at that point, it pushes it into He's Contentful. It pushes in, it stages it. It does all that. It also gives me a prompt to then put into Claude Design. You can see in Claude Design, I think I have one open here. So in Claude Design, I'll come in here and it'll build me like a full asset pack of all the imagery that I need for it. And then I'll say, great, I'm going to publish it on Tuesday. Once it's live, I say, great, it's live. And then what it does from there is it pushes it into my customer content library. And what I want to just stop and take a pause on here is, again, I'm just using, when I say a coding or a AI harness or a coding harness, Claude, Cursor, it's just the tool in between my tools, in between my apps. So I don't personally ever go into these tables. Hank manages all these. So he would push the story into here. He would log it. He would log that there's a case study, a quote, a stat, whatever it is. And then this table is indexable by anybody at Zapier's by their agents. So they could come in here and say, like, do we have a case study for this? Do we have a customer story for this? And it'll pull back and push that in. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. That is a lot. That's really great. It really is. You have a lot going on there. I want to take a step back just for everyone who's kind of like, whoa, I don't even know how to get started with any of that. And I think it was important what you said when you said, I don't want to have to go into these apps themselves. Like that really shows like where you're coming from. And just, I think it explains the idea that when you're using AI and all of its capabilities, you can pull data from wherever you want, put it wherever you want, and have the AI move it, change it, update it, etc., however you want. And so while you're doing that, and that's obviously within the confines of what you say. So my thought when I look at something like this is, what did I start with? What did somebody start with? Because for me, what I keep trying to tell people is, you are experimenting. You are going
Yeah.
in and you're saying, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to build a customer advocacy library of advocates and the content. Um, Help me do that. Ask me questions to do that. And then as you're working with it, you realize, oh, well, this would be better if we pulled from here. This information could be better. Sorry about that. And making those upgrades. So what is your, like, what's your process with that? And then I'll let Talal ask his question, her question.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
So you kind of nailed it with the like, and I kind of said this on the bat, start with one existing um, process or piece of your program that exists that takes time out of your week on a regular basis, or that just doesn't exist. So if right now in an Excel sheet, and some folks are asking, like, if I don't have Zapier, so I'm using Zapier, one, because well, it's where I work, but also my agent's able to read it a little bit quicker. But it could be as simple as, I know that I have a lot of advocates for my company, but they're logged in my CRM, they're logged in this Excel sheet, they're logged in my emails. And so then you say to Claude, hey, I want to centralize all of the advocates that have ever done something for my business or for my program in a single canonical source of truth. And then just stop there. Be like, let's build that. When I say surface, I mean, like, let's build that table first. And one of the things that I've found really useful is give your, it's such a weird thing to say, give your agent time to really think about that surface. So understand the schema of the table, understand the way that it's laid out. One of the things that I've been really focused on, or thinking a lot about, I guess, in the last 3 months, is how do I build my sources of truth through Hank first versus me building it and me maintaining it, because he knows all the data, he knows the schema, he knows the structure of it. And so just giving him that access and building rights to go and do that means that when I say to him, hey, I've got a new advocate, he's like, great, I know exactly where to place that because I built that surface and I maintain that surface for Rob. And so that's the biggest part, is like, don't look at what I've just showed you, which I realize is quite a bit. Don't look at it as like, oh, I need to build the CRM part, the pipeline part, the library part. Like, what right now in your advocacy program is causing you the most pain and is most, if solved, will have the biggest impact on your most important KPI that you need to report on a monthly basis. Because the other part, and then I'll get to questions here, the other part that makes this really nice is once you create this structure, then let me make sure I actually have this thing pulled up here. Then what you're able to do at the end of, a week or on a Wednesday or whatever, it's stuff like this, where you can see here, I said, hey, give me a quick update on my stories pipeline I can share with Miranda. Miranda being my boss. Oh, I'm sharing the wrong screen here. Yeah, this is the right screen. Cool. So I'll say, like, hey, give me an update on my story pipeline. And so then what it does is it goes to that Kanban table up here, this thing, right? And it says, hey, here's the stories that you've recently shipped. Here's what's booked and what's in flight. Here's new at the top of the funnel. And here's your watch list. Here's the ones that maybe have said no, or whatever the case is. And then you can go back to it and say, it's pretty good. Like, I think you need to edit it. I'm like, oh, this actually happened. And he forgets stuff. Hank's pretty good, but like, he forgets stuff sometimes. So I'll give him an update. So yeah. Questions on that, or in general? Talal, I think.
I have a question quick before Preston and Talal go. What are you drinking?
Me?
How much espresso is in that? Oh, okay, bubbly.
Yeah. No, but I did
Okay.
just have a Celsius too. So yeah, it's
Okay. All
probably didn't
right.
need it. Probably didn't need it.
I'll let people in the future know. Don't drink Celsius before you come to CMA Weekly and share. You have so much to share though too. So, anyways, I just wanted to throw that funny in there. Go ahead, call on your people.
Rob, I actually have a different takeaway. My first step is to order a lot of Celsius. So that's my step. But hey, out of curiosity, it sounds like a lot of the steps you have are already automated. So I'm curious, what's not automated? What do you absolutely have to do yourself or with someone? So I'm going to summarize very quickly what I've gathered from you for customer stories specifically. So
Mhm.
the advocate identification, all
Mhm.
of the data that's relevant, all of that is getting pulled in into a dashboard for you. At some point, you need to do outreach to the customer. Is
Mhm.
that also automated, the email itself? And two, what then does the interview actually look like? And it sounds like all the publishing is also automated. So the middle step is not automated.
Exactly. And that's the part that I really try to maintain as being human. So the identification of the contact, how they're using it, all that underlying data is to me administrative work that a robot can do. So it's going to then surface the person. I'm going to send the email myself. Like I'll have it drafted up a little bit, but then I'll edit it. It'll send the email. Hopefully they book an interview with me. That interview is a human interview, one to one. And then what I do immediately after that is I'll have my Granola, or if you're recording on Zoom or whatever, Granola is great because there's a really strong MCP connection, so it can just pull that transcript directly into your, Cursor, Claude, whatever it is. So the second that interview is done, then I go back to Cursor and I say, hey, just finished the interview with Talal. Can you update, if I've already got a V1 draft, I'm like, can you update that draft? Can you whatever? And then write me out a summary of that call and identify next steps. And so then it updates that draft. I have to push that draft into a GDoc so that they can actually read it, which that part MCP is not great sometimes. And then I'll send that back. And then after that, the approvals, all that's still human. Like I don't have, not that I couldn't, but I don't have Hank managing the actual relationships. You know what I mean? So
Makes sense.
it's more the work that I would have otherwise needed, maybe more people, more time, that those are the things that I've been trying my best to automate. And then the general day-to-day stuff so that I could like start work on a Monday and be like, hey, what stories do we have in flight? Who's missing an email from me? What do I owe? Those types of things. But then the actual actioning of those things, for the most part, I end up doing.
Okay, there's a lot of hands up. I don't want to hog the mic. Last question because I have 50, but last question. Has this process eliminated folks not needing to nominate at Zapier so far? Like, are people nominating customers to be customer advocates or asking for specific stories?
No, it has for the most. Well, I wouldn't say it's eliminated it. It's just streamlined it, right? So I still want, especially with enterprise accounts, I need the CSMs to do that. But what it has eliminated, like with Zapier, we've got a pretty strong amount of enterprise accounts, and those accounts, the stories that I'm developing for those are like anybody who's trying to get advocacy from an enterprise account, they're more challenging, right? Like you need to kind of almost treat it like a sales cycle where you need to get multiple stakeholders, you need to do all of that. And so that I still have people who are nominating for that. But for my more SMB, or specifically for that primitive work that you maybe haven't remembered because I talked too fast, but for like my smaller SMB things, yeah, that part I've got a weekly automation that it runs an analysis every Monday morning, and it finds the top 30 accounts with MCP usage. It logs those into a dashboard, a surface for me. It writes emails. I review all those emails, and then I send them all out being like, hey, you're using this product in a really cool way. I'd love to get 15 minutes on the calendar. So that part I've pretty much automated out, and I don't need too many nominations at that point.
Copy that, my man. Thank you.
Yeah. Preston?
Cool, Rob. We'll hop off camera just to say what's up. And I see the
Thank you.
fellow,
What's up?
the Canadian jersey. I'm trying to keep up with my dollar iced coffee from McDonald's from the ones that are in Canada, you'll get what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Rob, so I think I've gone to the zone where I have like a weekly report that's helping me kind of streamline a bit of the at least from take me out of the searching and more of like, hey, these are the hand raisers you need to look deeper into. I think the presentation today was really helpful to take it a step further and almost have it just like you mentioned, have it a bit more streamlined. The
Yeah.
question I had wanted to hop on and talk about is I saw the way that you had your cursor set up, and obviously the fact that you're willing to share the skills that you built with the rest of us, that's incredible. Where I'm struggling is I haven't gotten to the point where I'm built something like a Hank where it's helping me
Mhm.
orchestrate the workflows inside. I'm still very much like, okay, and I
Yeah.
have I don't I'm not sponsored by Celsius yet, so I'm not at that level. My question would be, once you share those skills and we're getting to that advantage, how would you recommend me starting to like, hey, I've gotten this layup from Rob of all the skills that he's built. Gotten this great head start. Like, how do I start incorporating that, or better understand how I can use that? I've seen myself take, like last week we had Kevin on, and he shared his like a version of his skills and the brain that he
Yeah.
shared. But I'm struggling to kind of like take what you're building and try to either incorporate it or develop it into something that works for what I'm looking for with more of my organization.
Yeah. So, like I said, I think skills are a funny thing where I think they're only as useful as how much role or outcome based context you've given your kind of like overall agent. Again, like, yeah, there's these individual agents that you can run through skills. And so where I would start and what really created the snowball for me, if I look at this file, in here, the most important thing are these to start with, because what that's going to do, you're going to load in, especially, I've created a watered down version of this because I'd shared this with a few folks, probably folks that are even on this call, and they were like, you're giving away too much. And I was like, whatever, like we're not in a skills economy anymore. It doesn't really, but the things like your primary context, that's the most important thing, because what you're going to do when you start is have an honest, open, meaningful, loving conversation with your agent. And you're going to say, hey, I'm Preston. This is the job I do. These are the goals that I have. Like, log these as primary context. And then what happens there is that every single time you start a new chat, or for the most part, it's going to load your context. See right here? So what it does every single time when I start a new chat, it loads my second brain, my brain context files. And so what that does is it creates what I think probably most people refer to as like persistent memory. And then it knows, okay, I need to go, like, okay, Preston's asked me to run discovery on this account. It'll first index your context file. And so if you don't set up an initial sort of second brain structure, those skills, they won't know when to invoke them. It won't know the context in which to use them.
That's a great tip. Thanks, Rob. Really, Westeros over here, but don't forget about the White Walkers. That's the main thing. Got it. Cool. I'll
Yeah.
hop off, let someone else have another chat. But appreciate your time and a great presentation, man.
Yeah. Thanks, Preston. Appreciate it. Stalk or Deja?
Thanks, Rob. Skulk here, joining you from Germany. This is wonderful. I have just two questions. So, when you do your identification, you mentioned Slack. You have something scrolling Slack, and you also mentioned in a report that you look at your top accounts. Are there any other channels that you're using for identifications? That's the first question. Second one, on the other end of the spectrum, now you have your table, you have people sharing stories. Do you have something automated that goes further? So for bigger asks like speaker recruitment, stuff like that. Have you built that out as well in a similar fashion, or are you just doing this for stories? Thanks.
Yeah. So I do have this same relative structure for speaker stories. I don't know if my colleague's on this, Ryan, but he runs a lot of our speaker side of things. But we basically built the same structure for speaker identification. We've got a big conference, for example, that's coming up in September. And so we run in that same way. I think to your first question about other inputs that I use, so I see Slack as the input for the human side of things. It's where we talk. Zapier's really cool because we do we pretty much only use channels, which is really nice as opposed to using DMs. What that has allowed is for context to exist, in a way that if everybody was chatting in DMs, you wouldn't be able to have access to it. And so that makes it a lot easier for agents to crawl. But I also just manually, there's channels that I pay close attention to, customer success channels, technical account manager channels, those types of things. And then my other identification is just usage. And so I've worked pretty closely with our product team and with our data team, and I've asked, okay, well, like what are the fields within Databricks that I should be running these skills against? And then that's how I build the skill for automated advocate discovery. Is like I need to first figure out what are the properties in this app, whether it's Databricks or whatever it is, that would identify usage. And then once I get that, I literally just like copy and paste it into Hank, and I say, hey, update this skill and use this as the discovery point.
I think we have one more question. And Deja, go ahead. Oh, Rob, I just wanted to ask one question that someone had said in chat. They said, is it one of those brain files is you telling Hank to write a record of what they've seen together? And is that what they were saying?
Whoever asked that question, can you ask it like
Libby says one of the brain files is telling Hank to write a record of what you've done together?
Yeah, his notebook file. That's the part where I'm like, oh shit, Hank's getting like a personality and stuff. Yeah, he's got a notebook file and a journal file, and so sometimes we'll go through projects and I'll be like, this was just an interesting build, this was kind of cool, and I'll be like, Hank, can you just go do a little journaling? And I've found that has made him more effective as a assistant to customer advocacy. It's just, again, it's like the second brain for all intents and purposes is essentially the brain, right? And so it's the piece, and you need to treat it accordingly. I've also set up like automations with that too, where every day, at the end of every day, I say, oh, Hank, I'm like ending my day, and then there's a process or a workflow that he runs to log context for me. He's like, oh, this is what we did today, like that kind of stuff. I just put it in the chat too.
Deja, you were next.
I'll make this really quick. Thank you so much, Rob. This was super helpful. I think my question is, and maybe you kind of alluded to it earlier, when you're looking at like all of your accounts, but like specifically like your top accounts, like the top advocates, I think you said like you run like an analysis every week and then you push it to a dashboard. Like, I'm assuming you're not just doing stories, like you have other things that you might have to do like within customer marketing. So like, how are you identifying like the top advocates for like speakers or, like webinars or references? Are you running that through Claude as well too, or?
Yeah, I would say, like, again, I've been here for 3 months, and I think the way that I've been trying to think about it is that my advocate registry is the thing that I'm trying to fill up. And so my primary output, like when I came, my boss said, like, your objective is customer stories. Ryan on my team, his objective is webinar speakers. And so we run similar things for that. But like for references, for example, I've more built the process for that. I didn't even get into that. I've got like a whole thing for reference management. But like, if I have a robust library of advocates and I have it organized in such a way that agents are able to go in, understand who the people are, what they're willing to do, and when the last time that I did something with them, then that can feed into the reference structure too, right? So I think I view everything as, how am I, as okay, these people are doing something cool with the product that we're selling. How do I start a relationship with them? And so I don't even typically like customer stories is kind of an easy output for me because I've built that system where I can like get a draft and get it on the blog. And like, so that's all I see that as my my sort of my start line, right? And so we're filling up the engine with the advocates, with the stories, and then we put on the start line. And then when it comes time for events, when it comes time for references, like our reference management process is very similar to, not very similar, but it's kind of like our advocate spotted, where I've got a channel. Salespeople can go there and say, hey, I'm working on this deal. It's mainly for enterprise. I'm working on this deal. I need a customer reference. And then that just activates a workflow that it then goes and indexes my advocate registry. It says, hey, here's these 5 people. They say, oh, this person would be good. It'll often tag the CSM and the AM, say, like, are these people still good, just in case? And then we just run your typical introduction. Are you open to doing this for this time? Yes, no, and then you log it. Yeah.
All right, that's super helpful. Thank you.
Do you have time for one more question, or no?
I got all the time in the world.
Oh boy, I wouldn't say that.
No, you're right. Canada, I think Canada's hitting the pitch pretty soon, but no, I got a little bit of time.
Thanks for joining, Rob, and presenting. I had a quick question for you with regards to the system you have in place.
Yeah.
Did you have an almost like IT AI evangelist at Zapier that you worked with to establish all the connections, or was it a lot of just self-discovery and you figuring things out on your own?
A bit of both, I would say. When I started, and I had this really interesting experience at a previous role where, we would bring in tooling like a Claude or a Cursor or something like that, and they'd be like, all right, go and use it. And it's like, well, it's not connected to anything. And if it's not connected to anything, then, it's not really that useful. And so when I started, Zapier's incredible. They have these like really great golden path documentation on how to connect to all the different systems. And so then I had that, and then I had Ryan Q, who many of you probably know from Laudable. He gave me this second brain thing, and then that like just sort of snowballed. And then everything after that has been, a little bit of like the account story discovery. I think it was one of our CSMs maybe, or somebody was building something similar. I saw it, I was like, oh, I could just take the root of that skill and be like, oh, I could do it for this. And I think that's the biggest thing is like, don't take what I just shared in that thing. Like, don't take my files as gospel, take them as starting points and make them good for what you need to do. And I think that's the part that I'm most excited about when it comes to using AI for these programs is you're only hindered by your imagination, basically. Once you get them connected, then it's just a matter of what can I do next.
I think that's my biggest blocker is the creativity aspect. What else could I do? What else could I build and all of that? Well, thank you, Rob, so much for coming. I've seen people say they are going to have to revisit this. So this is probably going to be the most watched recording of all time through CMA Weekly. Thank you, Celsius, or whoever you were drinking.
Yeah. If anybody works for Celsius on the call, like, hook me up. I appreciate it. But and anybody still here, like, do feel free, follow me on LinkedIn. I got time. I'm happy to get on calls sort of like individually and just talk through the things that you guys are doing. Sure. I know I went very fast. Maybe 1 or 2 Celsius was too much today. There's a lot. I would just end with, like I said off the bat, don't, hey, it's such a tech thing to say, but don't boil the ocean. Like, there's guaranteed one workflow right now that you are having 6 or 7 tabs open on a daily basis that's really collapsible with AI. So go collapse it, figure out how to do that, and I guarantee you everything's going to snowball after that.
Perfect. Well, come back whenever you'd like to share more, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, Rob. See ya.
See you guys.